I'm so excited for you guys to be here today. My name is Bryson Funk. I am the host for this show, and I am really excited to be back. It's been a couple months. In case you guys don't know, I am the newest member of the Dad Club. So I had, a little baby boy, and because of that, I was out for a good month plus, and just trying to figure out how to be a dad here. So it's really good to be back. Um, Greenhouse Gurus is a show designed to just learn, and it's really a free format. So we want to hear questions from you guys, anyone who's watching. We want to know what you guys are curious about. We cover a wide range of topics here, everything from operations to growing to even like management and hiring and all those different aspects of CEA and indoor farming. And so there really isn't any topic that's off bounds here.
Mhm.
So today I'm so excited. We have Gretchen. And I've been waiting for this for a while. I'm so thank you so much for jumping on and saying yes to being my guest today. I really appreciate you. Let's just start with you real quick. Give us your name, what you do, kind of in a nutshell, and where people can find you and your projects.
So I'm Gretchen Schimelpfenig. The P is silent. You can find me usually here in my home office in a remote mountain village called Huntington in the gorgeous Green Mountains of Vermont.
Nice.
Usually you can find me optimizing systems of a greenhouse or an indoor farm or at an industry conference. I am generally, as an engineer, trying to help businesses save money or ultimately get some money for doing an efficiency project. So either saving money by optimizing existing systems or going after something new like a retrofit or building a new greenhouse, for example, and getting some money from some programs to do those projects.
Okay. Okay. And I know that's really simplifying it. You do so much. And I hope we have time to kind of get into a lot of it. But so that is it in a nutshell. You say you live in Vermont. So is this a traveling gig? Are you gone a lot? Do you go, like, I'm sure you see a lot of different places.
Yeah, I usually see about 10 different cities a year for different conferences or um, site visits and other sorts of work. But I work remotely for an engineering firm that's based in San Francisco, and
Okay.
I also work for Cornell University and support them remotely as well. So I get to do all of this from here, but sometimes I'm traveling. Like I just went to Columbus, Ohio for Cultivate.
Nice. It's like the best of both worlds for sure.
I'm pretty lucky. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're in the East Coast now. Did you grow up in the East Coast?
I grew up in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. If anyone
Okay.
is from there, they know that kind of acronym. So from age 6 to 16, I lived about 10 blocks from the White House. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, that seems cool to me. Was it cool, like, as a kid?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got to take the metro all around town. I didn't learn how to drive until a lot later. So I really enjoyed growing up in the city and being so close to all that culture.
Yeah.
I actually got to, go to the National Building Museum and other museums a lot as a kid, and that kind of influenced me as I learned what I wanted to do with my job.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's a great segue. One of my favorite things, and if you watch the show, my favorite thing is like a career story. Like, how
Hmm.
did you get from point A to point B? How did you get to where you are now? Because I find it so interesting that so many people have this idea of what they want to do or what they want to be when they grow up. And
Hmm.
so often they either are something completely different, or the path that gets them there is completely different than what you would think. So
Hmm.
you said, like, as a kid you went to, the building museum, and that kind of sparked something in you.
Yeah.
Um, going through, I guess, let's say, like, high school to college, how did that interest form, and how did that get shaped into working for CEA, and in
Hmm.
this I guess industry?
It's funny. I do a presentation every year at the University of Vermont, and I tell their one of their sustainability classes about my career journey. And I've had a kind of every 2 years I've done something different. I've had some ability for a while now, but I've had a lot of interdisciplinary experience, which I think is in general how a lot of people end up in CEA. They've done a few different types of things. They end up here. Um, I was interested in architecture in middle school. I was living in DC, and I went to this design apprenticeship program at the National Building Museum, which had this really cool exhibit on high performance concrete at the time. And it was like all these new types of concrete. And I remember as a kid, this wall of concrete, and it was see through.
Wow.
So in the exhibit, it was like it was fully concrete and it was able to support a building, but if you could see through it. So it was like luminescent concrete. And I was like, this is really cool. And I, since I was good at STEM subjects, I learned more about architectural engineering, and I found an affordable program at the University of Wyoming. And this was actually before Plenty, before all of that, indoor ag stuff was really booming in the US.
Yeah.
And I focused on sustainable buildings in general. I got my master's in civil engineering from Stanford and specialized in sustainable design and construction with a focus on energy. And before I found the CEA industry, I had a few jobs. Like I mentioned, I kind of like every 2 years found a different sort of part of the industry and the buildings industry to work for. So I first worked for PG&E for like a very large electric utility in California on project management for a transmission line construction project.
Okay.
I actually have this belt buckle from one of the projects that I did.
Let's go. Listen, that is a Texas-sized belt buckle. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm very honored to have one of these. Like, I think only a few special members of the project team got this belt buckle, and so that was my first job. Out of master's program, I was working transmission line projects, right? Getting power to buildings, and then I was a commissioning agent for an engineering firm in Vermont called CX Associates. It was my first job when I moved to Vermont. And commissioning is basically like you're verifying new construction projects and renovations of buildings to make sure that they're installed right and that they're going to be as energy efficient as the owner wants them to be. And so I got to do things on like data centers and hospitals and not CEA buildings at all.
Yeah.
And then after that, I worked for the Burlington Electric Department, where I designed and implemented energy efficiency programs. So I was the account manager for the University of Vermont, and I helped them accomplish their energy efficiency goals for the year. And while I was there, I designed a Grow Light rebate program with some friends over at Efficiency Vermont.
Wow.
And that's when my journey with CEA began. So in 2022, kind of getting to present day, yeah. I'm a senior energy engineer for energy resources integration, and I lead our emerging technology programs and all of our diverse CEA services.
Yeah.
And if that's not enough, I'm also the executive director of GLAZE, which is the Greenhouse Lighting and Systems Engineering Consortium at Cornell University.
Because it's not enough. It's not enough.
It's not enough.
And founding member of Vivid, right? Which is one of your newest projects, right? Like, that's also incredible. Yeah.
Been great to launch new things from GLAZE that not only are educational, but also are really developing the workforce in a positive way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is quite the journey. And and honestly, something I keep coming across, especially for people who are in CEA, is how many people currently working in CEA did not ever think they were going to work in ag. Like it is the craziest melting pot of just like smart and driven and passionate people I've like ever met. And I'll even say, for myself, my background is in entertainment. I worked in TV and film, and started working at Eden Green 5 years ago, and I haven't left. And it's it's so unique. And that is definitely something that I've seen a lot, where you have kind of that clashing between, traditional growers and people who know more about agriculture, more about horticulture in general. And then you have this whole influx of people who really like are kind of learning as we go. That's me. Like
Yeah.
I didn't have any background in that, but also it wasn't really something that was put in front of me as a kid either. And so
Yeah.
I find that interesting. This kind of like roundabout way that you have always been interested in architecture and engineering, and it's kind of this like circular version where like somehow
Hmm.
you've ended up here.
Yeah.
But as a kid, so like in high school, were there were
Mm.
there ever like opportunities to learn about CEA, or when did that kind of come into the picture for you? When did you first hear about that?
So I I didn't even visit the greenhouses when I was at the University of Wyoming. So that gives some context. Like I didn't even think about this as a type of building.
Yeah,
I was thinking about these types of buildings with humans in them. Like this is
yeah,
the type of building I want to mitigate climate change by reducing the energy use of buildings. I didn't even think of these as buildings. When I was in high school, I would say that like I came from a very privileged upbringing. I I had a very driven family, had backgrounds in engineering, chemistry. My dad was a commercial airline pilot. My mom worked for defense contracting,
wow,
and she was actually involved in the computer revolution in the 80s and 90s. And so she worked in this like groundbreaking industry, and then after that industry worked in the dot-com boom.
wow,
And so I was used to the startup lifestyle with a one parent doing the kind of crazy new innovation stuff and another parent doing the very traditional work for somebody for 30 years 40 years sort of job.
wow, yeah,
And so I saw that, and I had a really good education growing up in DC. I saw a lot of technical roles that I could pursue. I mean, I had friends who worked for the World Bank, who not their parents worked for the World Bank, and worked for other government agencies, technical contractors. All this stuff in the DC area was very like you could do anything you want. Like you
yeah,
could become president, like
yeah, yeah.
so, yeah, it was. For me in high school, I wanted to be a marine biologist, like I think every girl in the 2000s did.
That is so funny. I have heard that so many times from like this age group. I don't know what it is, man.
I don't know, Lisa Frank, or like I must have watched a lot of Magic School Bus, and they like indoctrinated us with marine
Oh
biology.
yeah, oh
But
yeah.
my cousin actually did end up being a marine biologist, like for real, down in Florida. So I at least got to see what it really was like.
That is so funny. I love that. At Flipper was such a big thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think pop culture influenced us to think it was really neat. But CEA for me, it came about in a really weird way. I was, in Vermont working for the electric department, and then energy collided with CEA for me.
Yeah.
And that's because Vermont legalized the home growing of cannabis
Okay.
and had for multiple years been trying to legalize cannabis through the legislature, but the governor kept vetoing it. And so while I was there at the electric department, I started looking at the energy impacts of growing cannabis. And I was like, whoa, like people's residential electrical bills could like double
Yeah.
if if they grow a certain amount of cannabis that's legal to grow. And so I started collaborating with Efficiency Vermont, and we designed and launched a Grow Light rebate program. And I was so taken with CEA that I actually left my job at VED to work on CEA full time
Wow.
and became the technical director of Resource Innovation Institute, which is a nonprofit focused on resource efficiency in CEA, focused initially on cannabis, and now it's focused on all types of food, floriculture, and cannabis. And I got to write a bunch of best practices guides. And so I got to take this that I had on energy efficiency for buildings and deliver it to this market that I didn't really know a ton about, but I know a lot about electrical usage
Yeah.
and about about how to make things more efficient. So I wrote guides on LED lighting, high performance HVAC, automated controls, and so since then I've just been connecting those systems in CEA buildings with energy and carbon emissions, and then I guide growers to find new ways to optimize their greenhouses and indoor farms. And today every day I spend about half my day working on CEA stuff.
Wow.
um, I still try to keep a little bit of expertise and project activity in non-CEA buildings, because I think as a person in this stage of my career, you don't want to specialize too much too early.
Yeah.
Then you end up becoming a one-trick pony, and so
Yeah.
that's sort of how I've taken my career journey.
Wow, that's wise. The indoor ag space it's so broad. You have everything from like a hoop house with a fan, to these just behemoths, of like indoor ingenuity, like App Harvest and Aero Farms and all these bigger names. And so, what are some of the things that you have seen that have like stood out to you based on like building design and it's kind of a two part. And what is like your biggest suggestion to these indoor farms as they try to, like make this profitable,
There's no silver bullet for the CEA industry, unfortunately, and like the US as a whole. If you think about like the Netherlands, for example, or even like Ontario, Canada, like that's
Yeah.
like one climate zone. You can kind of start to make the same greenhouse in those places, but we need a lot of different types of solutions across the, California, for example, has in their own definition, they have like over 12 climate zones.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Because of how they bridge the entire US. And then if you look at, industry associations, they define the US as dry, cool, hot, humid, like all of these things that you can have, which, the Netherlands is the size of like West Virginia. So they've got like one climate zone. And so I think that greenhouses in the US have an interesting challenge where there needs to be some sort of standardized designs that work for certain areas and for certain goals. Like you were mentioning, some crops don't need the highest tech.
Yeah.
But some crops do, because it's cost effective to invest the money to make a perfect climate controlled box for this very high profit margin crop.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some stuff, it's better to grow it in a vented greenhouse because the climate's mild enough and the crop is tolerant enough of fluctuations. So to answer your question like an engineer, it depends. but like from my architectural engineering background, I always love to go back to a book that I really enjoy. It's called Sun, Wind, and Light. And it's about architectural concepts of passive orientation of buildings, the way you're programming a building,
Okay.
so that you're getting the most solar exposure to the building that needs parts of the building that need the most heat, and you're burying parts of the building if they need to stay cooler. And there's like all of these kind of, I'm really into passive building design, passive house, which is another like super insulated concept. So there's some companies that are making really tightly insulated and controlled greenhouses, which I think is this concept of like make it almost like an indoor farm, but it uses some sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a very promising concept in certain locations with a good solar resource. And then in places with less solar resource, like start making it more and more like you're growing in Antarctica, and you're growing on a NASA spaceship, and you're basically optimizing the energy inputs to the point where you're using the least amount of electricity to generate a kilogram of lettuce or tomatoes or whatever. So final answer is obviously LED lighting, like as well as decarbonization requires we all kind of move to electrically driven systems. And then everything is automated. Everything should be intelligent and integrated. That would be the optimal thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've seen the ceiling yet of what can be possible, which is what's so exciting. Like my mom got to work in the computer industry and see the capabilities of those machines double every couple years.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're kind of going to see similarly in these, especially with the interest from other countries in entering the US market. Like I think a lot of Canadian growers are interested in developing in the US, and growers who are experienced in Mexico can also do US facilities well. I think that we're going to see a lot of innovation over a short period, much like, the advent of the internet and advent of other things like AI.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. And I know that is something, our location is in Texas. We're in like North Texas, like west of Dallas. So if you know where Fort Worth is, we're a little outside of Fort Worth. And Texas is such an interesting beast too because so our we have that we have a system that is both indoor but also a greenhouse. So we are utilizing sunlight as much as
Mhm.
possible, but um, which is plentiful. We have a lot of sun in Texas. So I'll say that,
Yeah.
but also our climate is crazy. It is absolutely nutty. Like, it doesn't ever really get. We joke that we really don't have four seasons here. We have summer and then half half
Extra
winter, half
summer.
summer. Yeah, yeah. Fake summer, fake winter.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, like throughout the summer, we have temperature swings and humidity swings, and like it is a very difficult place to control your environment on the inside because of just how everything is constantly fluctuating. Even in the
Mhm.
fall and in the winter, we'll have 40-degree swings almost like day to day,
Mhm.
um, and and so it has proven quite difficult, to figure that out. And I think that that's something that a lot of people overlook, especially as they're putting in facilities. America is so massive, and like you said, there's so many different climates, and I think that's why you
Mhm.
see so many of these companies, going to the Northeast. It's a more consistent climate, I would probably say. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's definitely something so that's something I never thought of, when I came in, um, looking at this, and as I learned more from the growers and our team, like that was definitely something that constantly comes into play. And I just that is a unique problem for this, a unique opportunity, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Because like when I was learning about buildings and thinking about like in architectural engineering, you're thinking about like the skin of the building and how that can be optimized and designed. And then other engineers are thinking about the systems inside it. And so like in the beginning of my education, I was thinking a lot about like the external shell. And with a greenhouse, it's the flimsiest shell of any building around.
Yeah,
It's generally like if I'm in a room with a bunch of delightful windows and I have a bunch of plants growing in here. This is the room that's hardest to control in my whole house because it's constantly getting baked in the day and then in the wintertime it's getting frozen and it has terrible infiltration problems because the building's from 1830. And likewise, some greenhouses in the U.S. are from 1990, and
yeah,
others were like the glass is slipping, and so in general, like uh, they're unique opportunities, like you said. They're not challenges because everyone has to deal with them, and if they're going to take advantage of the sun, right?
yeah,
Or you're going to build completely indoors, make a box within a box, and then you'll deal with essentially three times as much energy as an indoor farm,
yeah,
and so three times as much energy with an indoor farm than a greenhouse. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the optimal greenhouse design, the optimal indoor farm design
yeah,
becomes standardized because just like for example refrigerated warehouses, right? Like those are really energy intensive too.
yeah,
And people want to make money running refrigerated warehouses. So they have figured out how to make those systems optimized and efficient. They figured out the most cost effective investment for energy efficiency to balance with, capex.
yeah,
And now they're making those well cooled while also not spending so much on energy that they're running themselves into the ground. So in a similar way, I think that just like data centers, other really grocery stores, other intensive places have figured out how to like balance the energy usage with their willingness to constantly invest in better equipment.
yeah, yeah. So, what are some of the challenges that you've seen, as you go to these different places and work with these different companies? Is there a consistent challenge that's kind of across the board, or is it different everywhere?
Well, when I was looking at challenges in advance of this chat, I was thinking about challenges that I've faced in regards to like market transformation and how I can get the market to change in general, whether that's growers or utilities or academic researchers. So the main challenge is that everything takes years.
That's so true. That is so true. Yeah.
So like engaging stakeholders effectively to get them to pull the right levers, whether that's like at a facility level, asking a facility owner and a facility manager to agree to prioritize an efficiency project and get it on the schedule and purchase the equipment, and all of that will take a year, basically. Like nothing really moves that fast in buildings, and most people have other priorities like running their business.
Yeah.
And then when you have other stakeholders like utilities and governments, they are notoriously slow moving, and everything that you do with them takes persuasion and time. And so I try to stay patient, and I try to celebrate major, like minor milestones within the major changes.
Yeah.
So like if like the creation of a new rebate program is my goal, or if like a policy change is my goal, or being a new system installed at a greenhouse is my goal. Like I just have to like find the interim steps to feel satisfied, because if you like hold your breath until that final big one, that you're going to be waiting a year, and like so I think that patience and listening are like the major things that I do to overcome those challenges.
Yeah. I find that so true, because I think especially in any new type of industry, I personally compare CEA to electric vehicles, in the sense that it is a newer technology that people are trying to figure out. And there's a lot of big players and there's a lot of money involved, but the infrastructure isn't there, and the education isn't there. And so before you can do anything, you have to educate the general public on what it is, how it works, why it's better. And like you're saying, that also takes time. That takes a lot of time. I live, eat, and breathe CEA, and so it blows my mind when I meet somebody and they have no idea what it is. But that's the majority. A lot of people don't know what that is, and have never heard of it, have never seen it, and so I know for us, like education is such a big part of. I would say it's one of the most important parts of this of like growing the industry, because there's just so many different aspects to it, and I realized when we were so I used to manage our R&D site, and that was when I realized that there was no support out there for this type of business. We literally had to say, okay, we have this problem. Let's go to Home Depot and see what can fix that problem. It's there isn't like a catalog that I can like look up, or a website I can go to. They're starting to be some now, but you just have to make do. And I think your point of the evolution of the American greenhouse system and like how that works is going to be an interesting thing to watch, as more people learn, as that infrastructure is built, as you start getting some of the seasoned voices from out of country that might come and say like, hey, this is what works here. But yeah, it takes time. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad you touched on education. One of the things I do a lot with, in general, as well as with my work with Blaze at Cornell, is workforce development and sharing the insights from these like really technical reports and these really thick academic journals, and get them out into the market in a way that's like understandable to people. So there's a couple things I wanted to share. Like since I developed the Grow Light rebate program, the main thing that I've been focused on is like translation. So okay, you created a rebate program. Now you need growers to actually participate in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you need to write articles about LED grow lights that help them understand that other growers are using them and that they work for them and that they're maybe even getting better yields or bigger yields or
Yeah.
whatever from those things. Um, so, like I mentioned earlier, I wrote best practices guides for RII, and since then, I've been doing a lot of things like webinars and short courses with Glaze, presenting and moderating panels at conferences, and writing articles in media to persuade the CEA industry to adopt efficient technology. Because there's been a lot of talk about, like, for example, like the labor challenges in the CEA industry.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge challenge. It's outside of energy. Doesn't maybe have less important. It may be more important than energy. Um, there's other things that might be causing concern, like access to financing and other things like that. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do with my persuasion that I'm doing with the industry is saying, hey, you can get money to do these things. It's not just do them because for the good of the environment or just so that maybe you have a lower utility bill. You can actually get money from these stakeholders I mentioned, like utilities and governments, to do this. So I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons why I left the commissioning agent job was because my job was to tell everyone to do the right thing, but I didn't have any money to tell them to do so.
Yeah.
I couldn't say, "Hey, owner, do the right thing. Hey, mechanical contractor, do the right thing." But working for the efficiency utilities, you can offer money to do the right thing. And working as an engineer now, I can help growers see the dollar signs of a project. So, like for example, I was recently estimating rebates and grants for a lighting project. And because this grower is in a location with a good rebate program, they could stack rebates and grants on top of each other and technically get the entire project paid for and then some.
Wow.
And
That's incredible.
and that's a nice, good scenario. Some growers are in regions without efficiency rebates, so from the utility, but they can still get 50% of their project covered if they're replacing lights or upgrading greenhouse curtains. It can be a really good way to get the business to see the reason beyond, being a good environmental steward.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
generally doesn't get anyone to do anything. I mean, I live in a leaky house. It's almost 200 years old, and it's hard to get me to invest to, make it
Yeah.
super energy efficient without giving me a rebate too.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Man, that's
yeah.
wild. Real quick, anyone who's watching, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type them in. This is an interactive chat. So if you have any questions for Gretchen, any questions for me, please go ahead, put them in the chat. Pop some hearts in there, pop some emojis, do whatever you feel led to do. But definitely we want to like we're talking about education. This is an educational chat. So if you have any questions or any myths or anything that maybe your friend Bob told you and you want to know if it's true, throw that in. All right. Okay, cool. Well, Gretchen, I have a swag giveaway that I want to do. And so the way this is going to work, everybody, is Gretchen has a question. That's a great segment. Gretchen has a question. And once she gives a question, the way that this works is the first person to answer it correctly, whether this is in the live chat now, or if this is later after this has been posted to YouTube. If you're the first person with the correct answer, I will get your information and send you an Eden Green swag box with some fresh lettuce straight out of the greenhouse. So it's a big deal. That's what I'm talking about. So, Gretchen, what is the question?
All right. So the question is, what city is Cornell University located in?
What city is Cornell University located in? All right, you guys heard it. So, first person with the correct answer, you guys win a swag box from Eden Green. Now or later. Have at it, you guys. Awesome. Good question. Good question.
Thanks.
So when you go into a project and you start working with a team, what are some of the challenges you face, like when working with that team and kind of integrating these new systems? And how how do you collaborate with these growers and operations teams as you get in there?
It's a good question. My partner is a salesperson, and one of their pieces of advice is that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should be doing twice as much listening as you're doing talking.
Yeah.
Which for me as a talker is a very good reminder. Like, so that's a big thing that I have to do is understand like what are the values of this team.
Yeah.
And how can I relate my mission, which is generally to save energy, to those values? It might not be the biggest value for them to just save energy right now as fast as possible. I need to figure out how fast are they trying to save energy? How much each year? Is there a current facility issue that's not energy related that could be solved by an energy efficiency project? For example, like a failing heating system or a control system that doesn't work well with their various pieces of equipment that they've installed. So I'm generally taking a good stock of the pain points of not just the leadership team, but also the facility team, the grower, the maybe even the consumer. Like if I, for example, can find this product at the grocery store, maybe I'm taking a look at it. Maybe I'm learning like what information is available on the packaging and how much of what I'm hearing about the pain points is apparent to the consumer.
Yeah.
And so when it's not a grower, I'm also like, for example, with utilities, I'm exploring new commercially available technology that can save, for example, like electricity or can save natural gas. And in general, I'm looking at things like commercial buildings, industrial buildings, and agricultural buildings, not residential. I don't deal with houses.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to do is evaluate those technologies by talking to a lot of people in the market, like the building owners and facility managers, but also the manufacturers of the equipment, other utility people like me, academic researchers, industry associations. And I'm basically asking the same questions to all these stakeholders and finding out, okay, like this pain point from this stakeholder could be solved by something from this other stakeholder, and figuring out the recommended course of action for the utilities so that they can like a chess game, play their strategy out while also understanding what the other stakeholders are going to maybe be doing in the next few years.
Yeah.
But going back to an individual business, one of the things I was thinking about is when I've worked with like multinational businesses, like not CEA facilities, but like perhaps like, for example, like global manufacturing companies that have like a big sustainability goal.
Yeah.
One of the things is that like you have to have a mix of easy wins and slower, challenging goals.
Yeah.
Like just like when you go to the gym, right? Like you're going to have that like personal record that you're going for, but then you also like you need to have some things that keep you going to the gym every day or every week. Or whatever.
You don't want to get discouraged. Yeah.
Yeah. You need something that's maybe low cost or maybe even no cost. It just takes somebody's time, like reprogramming a set point. Okay, great, cool. Let's save like a little bit of energy without any actual expense.
Yeah.
And those can keep people motivated to do the bigger, longer term stuff. For example, for sustainability planning, some folks want to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by, let's say, like 30% by 2030 or something. And it's like, cool, you wrote that on the whiteboard, you published it on the website. Now it's time to actually do it. How do you want to do it? How much do you want to spend to do that?
Yeah.
And sometimes they realize that they're like, oh, there's business priorities that actually are more important to me than environmental impact.
Yeah.
Like shareholder profits, for example.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe sometimes. But projects do have to consider more than just the financial benefit, because some efficiency projects or like decarbonization projects might not be cost effective, but might be worth it for improvements to resilience.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a conference in April, and it was like a presentation on Illinois public school decarbonization planning.
Okay.
And they had a table of all the electrification projects, i.e., like taking HVAC systems in schools and making them completely heat pumps, like no natural gas at all.
Okay.
The payback period on some of those projects is like 100 years.
Yeah.
That will not work out because the HVAC system will fail before 100 years.
Right.
So there has to be a different benefit that makes the public school system want to do that. It's going to be something related to resilience or safety or perhaps like carbon taxes or other things. Like those are going to be reasons why people do it. So long answer to your question is you've got to listen to the business and understand what are their priorities. If energy is on the third priority, figure out how are you going to fit your stuff into the other things that matter more.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's good. Are there any new emerging technologies that you're really excited about right now?
Yeah. Funny that you asked. At that same conference, I attended a presentation on industrial. I'm sorry, my cats are fighting.
Oh, you're good?
Did you not?
That's so funny. I love that you brought that up. My dog was losing her mind a second ago, and I'm glad nobody heard it because I was like, oh no, just stay focused.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just like, they gotta stop. I attended a presentation about industrial heat pumps, which like think about really high temperature processes like metal smithing.
Okay.
Those are right now, they're done with fossil fuel because there's really high temperature.
Yeah.
And it has to really hot, really fast. What they're developing right now are heat pumps that can do that, can get really hot, really fast. And right now they're only being developed in like Europe.
Okay.
And we don't have a ton of demonstration projects in North America, but imagine manufacturing facilities being able to be completely all electric.
Wow.
That would be really a huge innovation for ultimately our climate goals. And unfortunately, right now, it seems like that would make the businesses pay more for energy because electricity is generally more expensive than fossil fuel. But I'm hoping that technology can have a high level of development over the next few years so the costs can go down and the efficiencies can go up. Another one that is interesting is natural refrigerant.
Okay.
So if you're not familiar with refrigerants, most of the refrigerants that we use in commercial refrigeration systems and in all of our air conditioning systems, your automobile's air conditioning system, they are what's called hydrofluorocarbons or some other form of carbons that ultimately, if you want to like explain like I'm 5.
Yes, please. Please. I need that.
Yeah,
please.
If carbon emissions are bad, and like let's assign the value of bad is 1.
Okay.
Then the refrigerants that we currently have in all of our cooling systems are like 1,000 times worse, or
great.
Very, very much more bad.
Great. Okay.
And so what's cool about natural refrigerants, like ammonia, propane is a natural refrigerant.
Really?
So
okay.
if you don't burn it, it's actually a great refrigerant.
Wow.
Water is a refrigerant. Obviously, we know how ice is a refrigerant. Mm-hmm. All of those refrigerants have a carbon equivalency of 1 or 2 or 3. They're not thousands times. They're basically the same as CO2. So what the issue is that a lot of our current refrigeration plants, all of the equipment, like if you go to a grocery store and you take a look at their refrigeration equipment, it all is designed to take those gases, not the other more climate friendly gases.
Okay.
And again, explain like I'm 5, physics wise, the pipes are designed for the certain pressures of those gases, and if you try to put the other gases in the same pipes, it will go kablooey.
Yeah.
So for me, what's cool about natural refrigerants is like, if we can have more and more systems, especially as we're electrifying all these buildings with heat pumps, if we can have those heat pumps powered with natural refrigerants, then when those pipes leak, which they inevitably will, they always do. They are leaking gases which are better for the environment than bad. They're just bad.
Yeah.
They're not 1,000 times bad.
Okay. So that's like a newer technology that's being developed right now, or is it actually in play already?
There are some demonstration projects in the US. I did a class on natural refrigerants in California. So I taught some folks about some grocery stores that have them. There's some cold storage facilities that have them, but like in order of magnitude, there's probably dozens of facilities in California that are using natural refrigerants today.
Okay.
Whereas you then have so many, like thousands of facilities that are still using old refrigerants. So for me, that's the second type of technology I'm excited by. The two other ones that I put on my list are controls using AI. So the idea that algorithms using historical data and predictions of the future will decide how the greenhouses and indoor farms for other buildings, office buildings, data centers, like all of these buildings could start to be run by AI. And then the last one is grid interactive buildings, which is when buildings have batteries and they can serve as batteries to the grid.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So like think about like a building with a ton of solar panels.
Yeah.
And then it's got a battery storage system. If on a really sunny week there is a huge power outage or an issue in a certain region of the grid, that building could serve as a battery backup to the grid and give back its stored solar energy.
Yeah.
Those are, again, emerging. They're expensive, but I think that's how we have to take big steps towards greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. That's cool. I love those.
The nerdiest answers I could think of, but I was like, these are the things I think about.
Yeah. Listen, somebody has to, okay? Because I know I'm not, for sure. So thank you. Thank you for bringing those up. I mean, I think they're really cool. And in an industry that is moving so quickly and progressing so fast, it's going to take stuff like this to really, really make it work. And I've seen that, I've seen that on our end. And, we're constantly like riding that line of like, okay, what has worked in the past and what is just like kind of, good old boy, like this is going to work versus like, okay, things are moving and progressing. We need to bring in new things, new technologies, how we make them meld. And yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And you don't want to be the bleeding edge person who's trying out all the new tech and there's no track record of how it works. That's why what I do is like try to share, hey, this has been tried and tested in this scenario, and you need to test it in your scenario, but at least you can know a little bit going forward that you can expect this or that you should know this about it. But yeah, I try to advise like adopt new tech a little bit at a time. If you go whole hog into, for example, go from manually controlled greenhouse to completely automated by AI greenhouse, you're going to be overwhelmed by data.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to know why certain things are happening.
Yeah.
Because you change so many things at once. And so that's one of the things, I try to like tweak and peak, tweak a little bit, take a look at the data, tweak again, take a look at the data.
Yeah. Nice. Tweak and peak. Yeah. I like that. Mahmoud, I see your question. What do you do for rhizoctonia and fusarium root rot? That is a great question. I know I don't have the answer to that. Gretchen, dude, I think that's a little outside of our areas of expertise, unless you might know, but.
I definitely am not a expert in either of those and I'm not a horticulturalist or a biologist. I will say though that I do own 100 houseplants.
Nice. Nice.
Like I know root rot. My 2 cents would be that like you kind of have to start over. In some cases, some plants don't recover from root rot. I guess your question would be, how do you prevent it from happening in the first place?
Yeah.
And in terms of a commercial grow, I'm not completely sure what you should do, but I would say don't water too much in the first place. That's my thing. Like, especially in the wintertime, you take a look at the plant and you think that top of the plant looks dry. I should water it. No, it's still completely drenched underneath the soil. And something like a moisture meter or something that you can really know data-based need to water, I think that would be my answer for a commercial grow as well. We've been doing a study on irrigation control, and having like a gravimetric based control system can be really a cool way to know when the plant has truly dried back and when it's time to water.
Nice.
I'm not a horticulturalist, but those would be my 2 cents.
Hey, let's go. Let's go. We're doing this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mohammed, let us know like what media you're growing in. Because I know our system is a hydroponic system, and so we only have water. And I know that is something that we have experienced very little of, but I could definitely ask some of my growers later and get back to you. But yeah, let us know what media you're growing in, and if there's a specific variety you're seeing it in, and we could try to find the answer. But yeah, good points, Gretchen. And then from Megan, I'm seeing Ithaca, New York. I'm assuming that's to the Cornell question. Is that it?
That is where Cornell is located.
All right. Congrats, Megan. We will.
Do you remember? Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Good.
Do you remember Urban Outfitters had those like graphic tees in the like late 2000s, and one of them was like Ithaca is gorgeous?
Yes. Is that why?
Well, like if you've ever visited Ithaca, its topography is really cool, and it has these big gorges. Like, so the town of Ithaca is very like a cliff almost.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool. The campus is very hilly and like it's beautiful.
Nice.
Kind of like the Ring style, like built into the mountain style stuff.
Nice. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. I would live there just for that. I love that type of stuff. All right. Well, we're starting to kind of hit the end here. So I always like to use this last bit to kind of dream a little bit. Look into the future and hope, wish, and dream. And there's kind of two-part question here for you. The first one is about resources. So if somebody's watching this and is like, man, Gretchen's amazing. What she does is cool. I want to do that too. What resources are there for them, and kind of how should they start that journey?
Well, a free resource that I would recommend to start with would be checking out the Glaze Consortium's YouTube channel. All of the historic webinars and some of the short course content is on there. We're launching a library soon as well, so you'll be able to learn more about ag tech and its impact on plants and energy efficiency. But I think that'd be a fun way for folks to be able to see like a lot of topics, a lot of researchers, and sort of find something that interests you.
In Glaze,
I also, if you're
how do you spell Glaze?
Glaze?
Yeah.
Glase.
Okay, cool.
So if you search Glaze Consortium,
okay,
you'll
cool.
find that.
I'll make sure to add the website link to the description. All right. Yeah.
And then like I would say that if you're in your like earlier career, potentially like considering where to go for schools, I think that there's a ton of universities now that are really laying their claim and staking, like saying we're doing CEA.
Yeah.
So there are a ton of other universities, not just Cornell, like Ohio State University, Arizona State University, Michigan State, UC Davis, University of Wyoming, my alma mater. They're all like, so beyond the Glaze YouTube channel, check out these academic institutions for a lot of like really credible insights, research, as well as they offer short courses and conferences. if you're interested, we're doing a conference in Montreal in November for Glaze. And that's another way I really recommend just like attend one of the industry conferences, whether that's the Glaze conference in November
Okay.
or like Indoor AgCon in March, or the Ag World actually is coming up in a month in August. And so I think the best way is to really just like immerse yourself in those expo floors and see all these manufacturers and like talk to some growers. And I think that's the way to get to know this industry for sure, if you can find one in your area.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great too. I know that that can be kind of intimidating sometimes, but also I
Yeah.
want to second what you're saying and say that that is one of the best ways to get plugged in, best ways to get involved and to learn more. Even if it's intimidating, if you're an introvert, and the thought
Yeah.
of 1,000 people in a room is not that great to you, it's worth it. It definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go with a friend. I
Yes.
think like the expo floor is definitely better with a companion, and you can like tag team. And a lot of times for those conferences, the expo pass is relatively cheap compared to like the larger pass for all the educational sessions. So you can at least sort of dip your toe in and see what the tech is like, and maybe talk to some folks. Um, and of course, if you want to read my best practices guides from Resource Innovation Institute, those are on their blog, and they've published some really great stuff since as well. Since I left, they published a controls best practices guide for CEA, and they recently published like an irrigation
Wow.
best practices guide as well. So there's some great actors in the nonprofit space, the academic space. And then the last one I'll say is like the manufacturers also post some cool, helpful stuff. You have to take it with a grain of salt because it's published by a manufacturer who's trying to sell equipment. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they're often collaborating with universities as well and with the growers to test their equipment so that it's more validated. They're not just saying it, the grower tested it or the university tested it. And so I think checking out the white papers and case studies is a good way to learn like what's the stuff that hasn't really been completely verified yet. How could I be involved in that transformation, like I mentioned, of the market?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, great. Okay, last question for you. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing to make your life and your job easier, what would it be?
I think you'll laugh at this one because like you can see where I am. I'm
Yeah.
I'm in here in Vermont. So my ability that I would choose would be to be able to teleport, um, because then I could visit all the greenhouses I work with and the indoor farms that I work with more often.
You're like, I want to teleport. I just want to save time. I really do. I just
I
want
mean,
to.
one of my favorite greenhouses that I work with is only an hour or so away, but it's like half of the road is dirt roads because the greenhouses are in these very remote locations oftentimes. And so, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to just like see you every week, check up on things, like actually visit more often.
Yeah.
Um, Even though she's in the same state as me, I don't visit as often as I'd like. So that tells you that, yeah, teleportation would be very valuable to me.
That is hilarious. I love that so much, and I agree. I agree. I could
Mhm.
save so much time if I didn't have to sit in the car or sit in the plane. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that makes so much sense.
yeah.
Um, Gretchen, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day, especially at the end of the day. It means a lot to me. So,
Mhm.
if people want to find you or connect with you or reach out to you, how can they do that?
Well, LinkedIn is a great way to find me. So, my name is kind of hard to spell, but you'll find me if you start typing in Gretchen. There aren't that many of us. And then in general, you can find me at Gretchen at eripacific.com. That email will get to me. And if you're interested in the Glaze Consortium, you can email that same address and I'll get in touch with you on the Glaze side. But LinkedIn is probably the best way. It's not the sexiest place, but it's like the way to get in.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a really great night. And I'll chat with you again soon. All right.
Thanks, Bryson.
All
Thank you
right.
so
Take it
much.
easy. All right. Bye.